You make a lot of decisions every day, but this one could be the most important decision that you make. Yeah. We had a quiet, knock on wood, we had a quiet 2 or 3 weeks here with, we haven't really had any brief talk. I know you and I were talking before we went live, it's something that we both have experienced, which is related to people inside the company. Two things, either intentionally doing something or accidentally. Or accidentally.
We have done both many times. One of my famous ones is we were a husband and wife, they were divorcing and they were trying to sell the company and figure out what it was worth. And the husband was going into QuickBooks and basically changing check names. Like if they wrote a $75,000 check to a vendor, he would put his name on it, cash it, and then go back and put the vendor's name on it so that it looked like
oh my God.
Yeah, so we basically called him live, changing check names to his so that he could go cash the checks instead of sending them to the vendors. Basically came up with a nice little settlement for the wife in that particular thing. But then we've had it where you've seen it where the CFO gets an email from the CEO that says, hey, this vendor needs to be paid ASAP, wire $50,000 to this vendor and this account immediately, and the CFO sometimes will just go ahead and do it because there's no controls or policies or anything in place for them to double check.
It's interesting. We actually, like 2 years ago, our bookkeeper did that, and so she's got an email. It said it was from me, and she didn't call me and ask. She just went and she actually sent the money. I don't remember how much it was. Thankfully it wasn't, I think it was like 50 grand or something. She sent it. And I actually don't remember how it got to me, but it was rather quickly. Somebody, either the bank caught it or somebody caught it. And I was like, I said to her, what are you doing? Like, you know I would never ask you to do that. I've never asked you to do that.
Right.
I wouldn't ask you to do that. And I said, show me the email. So she shows me the email and I'm like, does that even sound like me? You've worked with me for how many years? Would I write you an email that sounds like that? She's like, no, actually, now that you mention it, it doesn't really sound like you. I'm like, because it's not me. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the dead giveaways. If you work with somebody and you're talking about a CFO and somebody's asking that CFO to do something, if you're the CFO or you're the controller, or you're the person that has the ability, the power to transfer money, you're reading a message.
Yep.
There's a voice, like there's a certain way somebody speaks. If it doesn't seem like it makes sense, well, you just ask. But even more importantly, after that, we put something in place that should have been in place to begin with. Now it requires 2 people, and the bank has to verify with 2 people before anything can be wired to anybody.
Right. Yeah, we have very similar policies in place. Yeah. I get phone calls from people, I don't know, a couple times a week that they've, sent money and they've sent 50,000, 100,000, 150,000. And sadly, a lot of times by the time that money hits the federal wire system, it's, most times it's just gone. There's not much you can do about it.
Yeah. We actually got ours back. I don't know how. Somehow they got it back. I guess it didn't get far enough and they were able to pull it back from the bank that it went to. But we've had clients who, like you and I are talking about, that we've had them do this and the money is actually gone. I mean, 6 figures is just gone.
Yeah, I mean, not insider, but we had the one last year or earlier this year, 7 figures were transferred out. They got it back, but the bank had no policy. So you should also check your bank policies too, because this bank literally, did a 7-figure wire transfer with no verification back to the customer.
I think it comes down to executive leadership, having policies and procedures that are there. I mean, the common sense things to protect the business. I mean, number one thing is don't make assumptions. Don't assume that your finance department has all the right policies in place, and if they have them in place, that they're even following them. Mm-hmm. So if you can go to your bank, and you should tell your bank that you can only do a wire transfer or anything above a certain dollar amount. There has to be at least 2 approvals, and those approvals shouldn't be just via an email. Like I get a phone call now from the bank. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you have any other thoughts about like other ways to get validation, but
yeah, really. I mean, we do a similar thing. If it's a small amount, it can be done online. But we have larger wire transfers have to be done either at the bank or on the phone, and then they have to call back to verify that it's actually. And then we have a passcode system. Like at Bank of America, I have a passcode system where I have to read them back a code to let them know that they're actually talking to me. So anything you can put in place to make sure the bank is staying honest, your people are actually sending the correct transfers. But really nobody. I mean, how often have you sent your controller or bookkeeper an email that says wire money to this account? You should be, for us, that's all ticketed. So
yeah. Well, that's true. We have our ConnectWise. So I'll send an email to our we have an address. I'm not going to say what it is, but we have an address that opens up a ticket for our bookkeeper, and also there's a workflow that emails me and our CFO. So that's like a pretty closed loop. I wouldn't just send her an email.
Right.
So she's learned that, and that's one of the key things. Like when you and I do like cyber audits for people, one of the things that's in there is like, what are your controls? What's the process? And I think if people don't review that process and they don't actually like talk about it every so often, it could be forgotten. And people do the human element is what they're trying to take advantage of. So you get a phishing email. The phishing email is not, maybe in this case isn't telling you to click on something. It's just telling you to take action. And because it sounds, maybe you're in a rush or whatever, you're tired or something, and you just go do it. I mean, legit, that is just a common sense failure, and it's a failure to be accountable. If you're overseeing the company's money and you have the ability to lose the company's money, you have the what's the word? I mean, I don't know. Your accountant is what I'm looking for, but it's early today. We're doing this early. I can't think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incumbent upon you to actually verify. So she should have called me in our case and said, "Did you actually ask me for this?" Rather than just go to the bank and just do it. And I was like, and one other time she did the gift card thing. It was like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
She did that, and it's it hasn't happened, and it probably won't happen again because we're so focused on it now. But if it wasn't working, people would stop doing it. And
yeah, so that's the thing. I mean,
it is working, and people still fall for it. Common sense has to be like in place there somewhere.
I literally on vacation last week had a family member that was asking me about the gift cards because they had someone from the IRS that wanted them to go to the store and buy gift cards. And I was like, the IRS does not take payment in Roblox gift cards.
How about
and they were about to go buy like $500 of gift cards to pay an IRS bill that they didn't have.
Isn't it a little scary? I mean, I don't know. It's just, to me, it's a little scary that all of us, it doesn't matter what company you're talking about, it doesn't matter how big the company is. Human beings, this is social engineering. They're just lazy. People, our minds are like, if you catch somebody at the end of the day and you have like that mental fatigue at like at 5 o'clock and they send an email at 5 and it's like, this has to get out, it's urgent, and it sounds like it's coming from me, and she gets that, I hope that this time around she would stop and ask, but so many people don't.
Right. And you could have your policies and you can run your policies 100 times perfectly, and then the 101st time you don't follow it, and then now you're out of the policy and you've now sent $40,000 or $100,000 to somebody.
Anyway, the message is use common sense. And you've heard the expression common sense ain't so common?
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, like people don't want to say things out loud because God forbid we offend somebody, but tough. Like use common sense. Like you can't show up to a job, have accountability, be responsible for the company's money, and then
flake out.
Not show up with common sense. And you know what? If you don't have common sense, maybe you should be replaced. Like it's okay to say that. It's okay to be direct, and it's okay to realize that that if the person who's in charge of the money isn't using common sense. In my case, I gave her 2 chances. I don't think she's ever going to do it again. But if she did it again, I don't know what would happen.
Right.
Because it would be the 3rd time she made the same mistake. 1 time you make the mistake, okay. 2nd time you make the mistake, shouldn't have made it again. But 3rd time, you can't make this mistake 3 times.
Yep.
You simply can't. There's too much at stake.
Yeah, we get that. And then I don't know if you ever get these, but I get fake emails from employees all the time to change direct deposit information. But they're so poorly written and they're coming from weird Gmail addresses and stuff. And I'm like, first of all, I don't handle our employees' direct deposit information, so don't send it to me. But it's like, so I always send them the employee question and say, hey, look at what you're trying to do.
It's funny. We use Insperity for payroll, so I had to change my bank account number a few weeks ago. So I said to my bookkeeper, I said, do me a favor, just tell Insperity to change my direct deposit. And she's like, I can't. You have to log into the Insperity portal yourself, which requires MFA, and you have to do it yourself.
Right.
So that's another piece of advice. Make sure that as often as you can in your business, no matter how big or how small you are, that you have mechanisms in place that have things like that, especially for payroll, especially for bank account information.
Yeah,
the big message here today
is the same thing. I can't change it. They have to change their own, and they have to log in with multi-factor.
The big message here today is social engineering isn't going away. People think of social engineering just as the phishing emails where they ask you to click a link or something. But social engineering, one of the oldest things that people have been doing, is just asking you to, like you said,
do something.
Buy the gift cards. They're asking you to just wire money. They're sending enough of these out that there's still a percentage of people that are still just doing it.
Yeah, it's a numbers game. If they send out 100,000 tomorrow and 2 people do it, they've made $100,000. Yeah,
you have to use common sense. Hold on.
We do a lot with realtors, and realtors had the scam where they'll right before a closing, they'll get their email hacked, and they'll send their clients a fake message that says, we need $10,000 more for closing. Send it to this thing, and they actually don't need it. But many realtor clients will just, because buying a house is stressful, and you're sending money everywhere, and you don't know what to do, and you're just trying to get to the closing date, and they'll just send that money, that $10,000.
That's a really good example, actually. And there's so many situations where there's things that are urgent, especially with real estate transactions.
Yeah, because you get that, it's like if you have 30 days to close, you do nothing for 20 days. In the last 10 days, you're just, doing everything. And then you get stressed out, and you get that email, and you're afraid you're not going to close. So $10,000 doesn't seem like a lot, and you just send it off.
Now, I was going to try and share something, because I had an old slide that actually showed some tips. But so number one tip is verify.
Yep.
Don't trust it. Verify it. Anytime anybody's asking you to do anything with money, never trust it. You have to go to the source. Most likely the source is going to say it wasn't me. Use common sense. Make sure that you put measures in place in the company. So even if somebody, like let's say, she's trying to call me, can't reach me, does fall for the sense of urgency, and wants to help, wants to basically make me happy and do what I'm asking, even though it's not me. The bank, you got to have protections at the bank to protect you from yourself. Every bank has it. Some of them are even more. We've worked with so many banks. Some of them have more features than others, but every bank has something.
Right.
And this is intentional. It's just like how I own real estate, and one of the reasons that I initially invested in real estate, aside from a long-term play on it, is it's very difficult to make an emotional decision to sell something like you might with a stock. If you get some information, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm going to sell. And then you sell at the wrong time. Having real estate forces the process to take a very long time to protect you from yourself, from making emotional decisions. It's the same thing. You want to have as many things in place with the bank to prevent anybody in the company from wiring money, from moving money, from taking money out on the line of credit. Those things have to have the most complex set of controls in place to purposely cause you to have to go jump through hoops to move the money to do something.
Yep.
I think that's like the best advice that we can really give. It's common sense, but some people still haven't gone to the bank and still haven't done it.
Yeah, what I always tell, I've told our VP of operations and other things, is there's nothing so urgent that it has to be done within 30 minutes. No vendor needs to be paid within 30 minutes. No bill. They can wait for verification.
The other thing you mentioned before, which is always going to be true, check the email address of the person that's sending it. It's like mine is at mind-core.com. It's not going to come from that address. They can't send from that's my email address. So that's my email account is hacked. But even if it does look like it's from me, and maybe my address is hacked, you still got to go to the person and say, did you really send this? Because odds are the answer is no.
Right.
Yeah,
it's like, and like you said earlier, like I know your writing style because we've worked together for so long. Yeah. If you didn't send me an email, I would know that it wasn't coming from you.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of know that the writing style and how things work.
And of course, multi-factor authentication.
Yep.
And all the basic security that's in place. But it still happens. It happens all the time. And we can't really give you much more of a longer list. It is common. The list itself of how to protect yourself is common sense. So our advice is use your common sense. Don't assume if you're watching this and you are the executive in the company, don't assume that the people that you've put in charge of the money are remembering this. Every so often, maybe once a month or once a quarter, have a refresher. It's a 5-minute conversation. Bring it up. Do a role play. Run through the process. Have them say the process out loud, whoever it is, whether it's a few people or a person, and make sure that they're really, really clear on it and get that peace of mind. This is a super simple one to avoid. It's going to happen, but it's still easy to avoid. You got to use common sense.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they wouldn't keep doing it if it wasn't profitable. So,
if you have a question, or if you're watching this and You're curious about how to put a cybersecurity strategy in place. You're curious if your cyber strategy is enough, if it's still relevant, if maybe it's out of date. Things are changing now, and there are some tools that are better. There are some approaches that you can add, some tactics you can put in place. Just reach out to us. We work with companies of all sizes. We have not just all sizes, in all different areas. We have there's no type of company that we don't work with or haven't worked with, and you'd be surprised. Under the hood, it's mostly all the same. Some have different compliance. You have financial compliance, you have HIPAA compliance, but in the end, it all comes from the same set of standards. NIST.
95% of it's the same. We have a few things we have to do differently here and there for a few compliance standards, but for the most part, if you put in, your CIS basic controls or CIS 8.0, you're pretty secure.
100%. So we're here for you. Reach out to us. It doesn't cost you anything to check in. We'll give you our advice. And maybe you decide you feel good and you want to work with us, and it's good too. But it's okay to call us. We'll give you advice. Doesn't cost anything.
Yep. This was a day late and really early, but this is a good one.
Yeah, this is a good one, and we're short too. I think we should do it early in the morning because we both have the whole day ahead of us to get going. So we're much quicker.